Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanyavadi Paschatara Satayane. Today we're going to be celebrating the disappearance of Gunagrahi Maharaj. He disappeared about 14 hours ago. And we were going to talk about deepening our relationship with Srila Prabhupada, and I wanted to make this, I thought it was appropriate we make this class about Maharaj, and I don't think this will be the only class. And I've asked one of our friends that work with Maharaj, who's living in Alatra, I asked him if he could come, and Jayani Tai, so hopefully we'll get him on. He'll also be able to speak. And then I'm going to record this class, and then I want to share it especially with the disciples of Maharaj. And I want to give this class in a way you get to know him, and of course as you learn about him you'll regret you didn't get more of his association, but I want to talk about this class in a way that we can get inspired. And I'm also going to write something which will be more organized and more in depth. And this will be a little free-flowing, spontaneous. So I wanted to begin my talk about His Holiness Gunagrahi Maharaj by just giving a little history of how we know one another and what we did together, so you kind of understand my perspective of where I'm coming from. And I first met Maharaj in 1972. I was living in Toronto, Canada. And I had become very ill. I wasn't used to such cold weather. I'd been in Canada for about 2 years. And I decided that I needed to go to Los Angeles or California, where I'm from. I actually had pneumonia. I couldn't tolerate the cold weather. Either my mind couldn't tolerate it or my body, or both. So coming from Toronto into America, you come into Buffalo. And so I came to that temple, and he said, "Why don't you stay here?" I mean, he wanted me to stay here permanently, and I said, "Well, I'll stay for the summer," because it must have been around June. So I spent a few months there as a member of the Buffalo Temple, going out on Harinam and doing what I could to serve. And that's where I first got to know him. Temples were small in those days, so if you lived in a temple, you got to know everyone really well. And then, after 2 or 3 months, I left. Jayani Tai, I'm going to talk a little bit, and then I'll bring you on, and if you want to make any comments on chat, you can do that for now. And so I went to Los Angeles in 1973, and I was in 1972. No, I went in 1972, excuse me. And I had been in Los Angeles and then moved to San Diego. And San Diego was about a 2-hour drive from south of Los Angeles. And then in 1973, Maharaj came there. He left Buffalo, I believe it was 73, because his wife couldn't tolerate the cold winters. And they thought San Diego would be good. So then Maharaj showed up, and he was married, didn't have children. And coming from temple president, he kind of just took like a very humble position of whatever, just doing whatever. And I remember him, I believe to support himself, he was making and selling prasadam. And so that's when we first got to know him. And at that time, at around 1974, the temple president had gone to San Francisco. And so we needed a temple president, and our godbrother, Nrsimha Chaitanya, became the former temple president, said, "You be the temple president." And so he took it, but he didn't feel qualified. Actually, I saw Nrsimha Chaitanya was there last night with Maharaj, which was wonderful. So Nrsimha Chaitanya took over as temple president. And he didn't really feel that capable. He didn't like doing it. And Maharaj was doing so many little things around the temple, exciting things. And then at that point he said, "Why don't you become the president?" So I think around 1974, Maharaj became the president. So we started working together in 1973, and then we worked together as temple president. And then together we got the current temple in San Diego where it is now. And we developed that together. And so we worked together basically from about 73 to about 73 to about 1996. In between that, I spent a little time in Los Angeles, but we were always in touch. San Diego, Los Angeles, it's the same zone. And I was Sankirtan leader, and we would help both temples, and I would be in both temples. And Maharaj was also traveling and preaching. But I was always going back to San Diego, and with the exception of 2 years, I was gone in Mauritius and South Africa and a little bit of Europe, maybe 2.5 years. And then I came back to San Diego. And I spent most of my time there. So I was thinking this morning that Maharaj taught me many things that he didn't know that he taught me, just by who he was. And the first thing I would like to say about him is that he had a nature which is wherever you would plant him, things would grow. Not, it said wherever you're planted, grow. Yeah, that's good. But what I meant, wherever you planted him, things would grow. So you could take him into any situation, no matter how the situation had been going in the past. When he came there, he would figure out how to make it better. It was just how he was by default. It would just, you couldn't put him somewhere and things wouldn't get better. He liked to make things happen, and he made things happen. It was his nature. And so you would know for sure, no matter where you put him, things would get better. No matter how bad things were going in a particular situation or whatever difficulties they were facing, if you put Maharaj there, it would get better. And there's testimony to this. I think maybe one of the greatest testimonies to this was the success of the San Diego temple under his guidance. Later on, he had turned the temple over to Bhakti Prabhu, and he had taken sannyas, but he remained there as preacher, and he headed up the Bhakti program, and this was a time in ISKCON when the Bhakti program was just beginning. And San Diego temple was making maybe 1 or 2 devotees every few years, and then Maharaj took over the Bhakti program, and it just skyrocketed, and so many people were becoming devotees, and he was so expert at making devotees because he really liked people. He just liked people, and he was very accepting of people. There's those of you who aren't from San Diego may not know this, but there was a group of men in San Diego who were devotees, some even initiated, who had a hard time with irregative principles, or they were just kind of rough characters. We would say rough around the edges. And Maharaj was like a magnet for those people. They all just loved him, and he loved them. And some of these guys were in and out of jail. Some of them were taking drugs, selling drugs. What we use the term to describe these persons as unsavory. It's an English word, which means they're just kind of people that get into trouble and create trouble for other people. I don't want to call them criminals. They were devotees, but they were tough guys. If somebody was like picking on Maharaj or creating a problem, it wouldn't be pretty for that guy. They would take care of him, if you know what I mean. Tough guys, And they were all attracted to him, and it was like because of him, they could be devotees. And it was like so obvious that these were kind of people that, you would tolerate, but you wouldn't really give so much affection and time to them because you feel like, what's the point? these guys are just like, they're rough around the edges and they'll probably be that way all their life. Of course, he smoothed them out. They're all doing well, or most of them are doing well or have done well. And so I used to talk to Maharaj about that. I'd say, amongst all the devotees I know, it seems like you have this special relationship with these characters. And he said, yeah. And like he'd have a special relationship. Like when he would see them, these big tough guys, you're like, hey Prabhu, and he would like punch them in the arm as hard as he could, because that was like what they liked. And he had that energy and he had that mood. Like, hey, homeboy, and he would just hit him. And they loved it, and he loved it, and it was like this unique relationship that nobody else could have with them. I mean, I had a relationship with them a little bit, but the relationship Maharaj had with them, nobody could have with them. Nobody could love them the way he loved them, and nobody could love him the way he loved him. So I would talk to Maharaj about this relationship, and I'd say, Maharaj, it's like all these like low-life devotees, no offense intended. The devotees I'm talking about. Well, no, I'm talking about that they won't be offended. They will agree that he was their savior. And I said, Maharaj, it's just so unusual that, you're such a good devotee and you're like, you get along so well with these people, because you think, Brahman, and so forth. You're not going to be like really buddy-buddy with these guys who are doing, sometimes unmentionable activities. And he said, yeah, it's in my chart that I would be attracted to low-class people. So, but he used that as one of his outstanding qualities, because he attracted so many people that really had no other shelter but him. But getting back to the Bhakti program, I wanted to tell you one of the things that he did, because it's very inspiring. Maharaj understood that if we give people association, they'll become devotees. And he was always going out and preaching and looking for people who could be devotees. That's basically what he did all day. In those days when we had the Bhakti programs, he would just go out and preach in colleges and various places, making prasadam, bringing it out, meeting people, traveling around, meeting people, making relationships, looking for potential devotees. And whenever he'd find someone that was a potential devotee, he would do something to, it was just think, what can we do to get this person to be a devotee? He was always thinking about making devotees. So there was one boy, unfortunately I can't remember his name, maybe someone who's listening might know if you're from San Diego. So he met this boy, and when you meet people, you can kind of see that if this person got association of devotees for a week or two, stayed with us, they'd probably become a devotee. So this boy was a person like that. So Maharaj asked the boy, he said, what do you do? He said, I'm a painter. And Maharaj said, oh, we have a room that needs painting. It's going to take about a week to paint. Can you come to the temple and paint it? And the boy, he wasn't doing anything at that point. He said, yeah. And Maharaj said, well, can you come early? Because we have a program at the temple. You can stay for that. You can take breakfast and so on. So, so the boy came. He spent a week. All day it took him. He was just single-handedly painting a room. And at the end of the week, as Maharaj thought, he became a devotee. He moved in the temple. He became a brahmachari. So you might think, well, what's so interesting about that? You needed a room painted, and he was a nice boy, and you asked him to paint. Doesn't that happen all the time? The thing was, the room didn't need to be painted. But Maharaj knew, here's a painter, he likes to paint, he can paint. If he spends a week at the temple, he'll become a devotee, and we need to give him something to do that he likes doing that will keep him here every day. So the room did not need painting. Maharaj created that seva for that person so he could become a devotee. So this is how his mind was working. He was always thinking how to make devotees. Another thing Maharaj used to do was that whenever he was cultivating somebody, he would always have evening programs. He would just create programs at people's homes. And the reason he created them is so he could call that person and say, we're having a program, I want you to come. Because if he called them, they would come. So it was the same idea. It wasn't like this program was planned, okay, every Wednesday at so-and-so's house we're going to do a program, and we need to do this program to invite the devotees in the area. There was nothing like that. It was like, we need to do a program so I have an excuse to invite so-and-so and so-and-so, who are both on the verge of becoming devotees. And I need a program I need them to come to as many programs as possible. So he would just say, okay, we're going to have this program, we're going to do this. He would just keep creating programs and then calling them up. Well, we're having another program, can you come? And they would all come. And this is how they became devotees. So I think one of his great qualities, and I think one of the reasons that he was able to make so many devotees, as I was saying earlier, is he didn't judge people. You know, he liked people. This was just his nature. He liked people. And if someone had a devotional inclination, he just liked them and he saw how to engage them. And somehow or other, he didn't see all the other stuff, or he saw it, but it didn't deter him. It wasn't that, oh, this person's like this or that, we can't allow him to do service in the temple, we can't allow him to stay overnight in the temple. It wasn't like that. It was like, oh, he would see that this person has got a good heart, he's got some bhakti. If Maharaj liked him, that was it. The person was in. And, you know, whatever he did is like, you do that on your own, but you do this service, you're one of my men. So he had this ability by nature to not make people feel there was anything wrong with them, and to always treat everybody like they're his good friends. And you know how friends treat one another, they don't look at the faults. So he would treat everyone like they're great friends, and so it made it so easy for people to become devotees, because it was always like, hey, come with us, we're doing this. And stay over at the temple, and they'd get up late, whatever, you know, don't worry about it, you know, here's some service for you, can you do this and that? And he would keep them engaged, and they just felt accepted, they felt loved. And I think, I was just thinking about this today, you know, the Krishna conscious movement, you can enter on so many levels, or you can find yourself on so many levels. And some levels are very Brahminical, and some levels it's just service, no sadhana, and some a little of both. And it's so important that people be accepted wherever they're at. And, you know, we say, come as you are. So Maharaj was like the king of come as you are. He would just accept people. In fact, he had this nature that some people, like if they were good musicians, especially if they were good drummers, and sometimes we'd be outside doing kirtan, and you know, some drummer would come, and Maharaj had an electronic drum set, and we used to, in 1992 or 93, I forget, we were out in Washington, D.C., and there's a big place where all the tourists come, and we were doing kirtan. And every day, I think, maybe Jai Nita, you remember, every day, this guy would come, this black guy, and we'd ask Maharaj if he could play the drums. This guy, his shoes were plastic bags. He was a homeless guy. I mean, his raincoat was a plastic bag, you know, or his shoes, he had plastic bags around him because they had no soles. I mean, he was dirty, he was down and out, but this guy was an amazing drummer. Is that right, Johnny Tiger? Was he a drummer or a flute player or a sax player or something? And so I remember every afternoon he'd come and Maharaj would just let him do whatever he did, play the drums or, you know. And Maharaj was like, he would love these people. He would just, you know, he'd be the kind of guy who would like, are you sure, he might steal your drum if you turn your back. And Maharaj, it's just like he had this thing where he would just love these kinds of people because they were, like if they were good musicians, he would just say, hey, he's a great musician, yeah. And he would like them, say, this guy's cool, And Maharaj really liked African Americans. He really liked them. He thought they were really cool, great musicians, great athletes. And so I believe this guy was African American. What was it? Musician? What was his name? He played the drums, or he was African American and just a homeless guy. He was a really good musician. He could play jazz riffs to the chanting on the keyboard. Oh, he played keyboard. Did he play drums also? Yeah, and so Maharaj would, he loved, this guy was like really good, you'd see him as like a homeless guy, but, Chinese tie is interesting. I might see if I can get you on. There used to be, does anyone know how I can bring Jaini Tai on? There's got to be some button somewhere that I hit. Can anybody tell me if I want to bring Jaini Tai on as a speaker? There's a button I can hit here, but I could lose you all. So somebody who knows, on the bottom I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and fourth button looks like fifth button on the bottom. Looks like I could bring in a speaker. If somebody can tell me how to do that, I'd appreciate it. And then Jaini Tai could, yeah. Anyway, Jaini Tai can ask to join. How do I ask to join? How do we ask to join? Can someone explain that to me? I'm on my mobile phone. So, yeah, I have to ask you, Jaini Tai. That's what I'm trying to find. Okay, I'm going to hit a button. We might lose you, but... Yes. Oh. Yeah, I think I can do it. Hold on. Hold on, everyone. I think we can do it. Wait. I just have to, yeah. All viewers to send a request to join. Oh, you have to send a request. If you send a request to me to join, then we can do it. Green icon is to ask to join. Okay. So, is it? Shows a person in a circle, another one in a frame. So how do I, yeah. So, when I go to Jaini Tai, I don't see the green. So how does Jaini Tai create a green? Can someone explain it to him? I see, like, Jai Shri has a green. There's a button next to comment on my phone that I can push to request to join. A button next to comment. There's a multi-person functionality. Oh, yeah, I was born in 1950, so this is like seriously, serious problem here. There's a multi-person function. Oh, I'm on Samsung. Does that mean we're... has to press the green button next to the comment box. Yeah, Jaini Tai. Yeah, and then I can bring you on. That'll be cool. This will be the first time we have 2 people. So, Jaini Tai. Okay, now I'm going to hit Jaini Tai. Bring. On. I just hit the button that said bring you on, but I don't see you. Are you on? Say something. Maybe you are on. I see a little something there. Are you on? I don't. Well, I can't. Are you? Are you on? Sent request. Let's try it again. Bring Johnny Childsman on camera. They receive an invite to join your broadcast. Okay. So maybe you have to hit something now. It says adding you. So do you have to hit something? Or maybe connecting? Hey, you're on. Okay.
All right. It only took 10 minutes. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's the first time we ever did this. This is like amazing. So I'm just going to talk and then I'm going to talk and then you can say what you want to say. Is that all right?
So someone asked about that homeless man. What happened to him? He used to come for almost every day for a while. It was weeks, maybe more than a month, and then we didn't see him anymore. But he was amazing. This guy was amazing. He would sing like to get money because he's homeless. He would sing on the steps of the different museums, and I wish I could remember the song, but it was a wonderful song. It must have been like a Negro spiritual or something. But he sang this song that was basically saying, "Okay, I have all these intentions, and I'll do it tomorrow, and I'll do this tomorrow." And then the last line is basically, "Tomorrow may be too late." And it was actually very like soulful and amazing. There was another woman who was a security guard at the Air and Space Museum. We set up right in front of the Air and Space Museum, which is one of the most popular museums really in the country. uh, the time we would set up in the spring, it would have maybe 20,000 people in there every day. So we were getting a lot of traffic. And so this woman would come out sometimes, and eventually she just started becoming a devotee. She started coming to the temple. She came out and chanted with us. Just, and again, like this was not the kind of person that you would see and be like, oh yeah, she could definitely be a devotee. No, she was just like this very like kind of middle America, short African American woman, super sweet. And but yeah, she just became a devotee. You were saying that Maharaj said that he was attracted to low class people. So I mean, so people at home can realize why I was connected with Maharaj. I wanted to tell he was never shy about telling even embarrassing stories about himself. And there's a
Yes.
couple he always told me about when he was first a devotee. And one of them was he first got attracted to the devotees because he saw the kirtan and he saw the mridanga, and he was like, "That's a cool drum," and so he wanted to play the drum. And so he went up to the devotees and like, like, "That's a cool drum." And they were like, "Okay, So he played the drum, and he just really wanted to play the drum, he said, and so like that was the only opportunity to do that. And so he did that, and then gradually he liked the kirtan too. And a similar thing happened where he would come for breakfast every morning. He was like, he's a college student. He's not eating great food, but then he comes to the temple. There's this amazing prasadam breakfast, and it's like he just comes every day. And then one day he comes, and they had changed the breakfast time, and now it was class time. And so Maharaj said, I just kept coming because I didn't want them to think I would. Well, before I was just coming for the breakfast. So he also told me, this is all in Buffalo. Also, he told me about the first time he saw Prabhupada was speaking at the university, and it seemed like 100 or more people, a couple hundred people maybe, and they're just spread out all over, and some were in chairs around, and some was just, there was like a lawn, and Maharaj just laid back, he said, and like he put his feet straight at Prabhupada, and just, he's like, and I just kind of took a nap. So he was always, yeah, very willing to share his foibles along the way. He he
Maybe I want to comment on
yeah,
two things.
yeah.
On the drum, Sometimes I would ask God brothers, just out of curiosity, I'd say, well, if you weren't a devotee, what would you be doing? And Maharaj said, I'd be in some park playing conga drums, traveling around playing conga drums. And the thing is, one thing I like about him is just like he knows himself and he knows, well, this is what I like to do, so I have to figure out how to do it for Krishna. It wasn't like, he's like, I can't give this up. It's in my blood. So, and he knew it was controversial sometimes, but it was just, he had a nature and he would figure out how to engage it. And then he did engage it. And I love to have kirtan with him when he played the conga. It was one of the highlights of my association with him. And the other thing you were saying about his honesty, yeah, he was, he didn't hide anything. And, periodically we would talk, or he'd call me up, or he'd write me and say, I'm dealing with this or that. What do you think I should do? It was just like complete open book, like not edited. It's just, this is how it is. And I really never had any God brother that open with me about
There was,
his
oh, go ahead.
difficulties. No, but he was open to you also, which is even more amazing.
Well, and I was one of these straight edge kids, and really because of Maharaj, that whole thing took off. And in North America in the early '90s, the temples were dead. The first temple I went to was the DC temple, Potomac Temple, and there was there was this is like a huge temple with Sita Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, and Radha Krishna deities and Gaur Nitai, and like it was a big temple, and there was maybe 5 people living in the temple when I went the
Can you
first time.
explain to can you explain to those outside America and those younger devotees the straight edge scene, and then how Maharaj understood it, and how he dealt with it, and who became devotees because of that?
Yeah,
In
so
2 minutes or a
I'll do my best. So straight edge came out of punk, hardcore punk, and it was basically a reaction to all the kind of idiocy of drinking and drugs that went on in that scene. And it was a reaction that said, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not how I'm going to spend my time. So there was all these kids who were teetotalers and not doing drugs, and then beyond that, a ton of them started becoming vegetarians. And so one of the people who sort of started, it was actually the second wave, but that's not important. But one of the people who really popularized this whole scene became a devotee. And it was kind of like, for the straight edge scene, it was kind of like when George Harrison became a devotee or something like that. Everyone in the straight edge scene knew who this person was. And eventually he, the, so this guy was Raghunath Ray, and eventually the guitar player from his band also joined, and then so there was people who were already like really liked and established in the scene, and then they were becoming devotees. And so naturally, you have these 16, 19-year-old kids, and they're it's an attractive message, and they just started. No one was coming to the temple in those days. Like there was like a few Hindus that would come, and a random person here or there. But in the 90s, by the time in the Potomac Temple, where there used to be like 5 people, first of all, there was tons of other devotees, and then like every Sunday we'd have like 20 of these straight edge kids show up, and it wasn't easy to get to either. This was like you couldn't like um I grew up a couple hours away. For me to get to the temple, I had to get a ride to the bus or train station, then take a bus, usually a bus, because I was like 16 and poor, and we'd take a bus to the train station. Then we'd have to walk like it wasn't like super far, but it was like 15 or 20 minutes, and you're carrying your sleeping bag and stuff like this, and then to the subway station, and then from the subway station you had to take a bus to near the temple, and then you had to get someone to pick you up. And anyway, the point is, this wasn't like an easy place to get to, and these kids were coming every Sunday, and more of them, and Maharaj really wanted to make sure, like you were saying, Muhammad, he knew how to engage people where they were at. So
Was he like the original, was he like the original devotee who quote unquote exploited that scene? Like
well,
he
well
figured it out and just dove into it?
so he had a devotee with him on Krishna Fest called Kalki, and Kalki didn't really come from the straight edge scene, but he recognized it for like what it was, and told Maharaj about it. And Maharaj was sensitive and smart enough to be like, okay, yeah, this is let him go with. And so he started making these fanzines, and he started preaching to these kids, and eventually, like, Kalki became a huge, like, he was kind of like a celebrity around the scene himself. Like, oh yeah, I met Kalki Das, um, and
Let me
not
say
only,
something. Let me say
yeah,
something
yeah,
about this because it's interesting. Because, a lot of times when we're preaching, we get a little mental. Should we do this? Should we do that? Are we allowed to do this and that? And Maharaj was just like, whatever works, do it. So I came on the tail end of it. The scene was still going, but I wasn't there in the beginning. And you know how we would produce our own literature for Krishna Fest. It was like we produced literature that was some of the best literature for introducing Krishna consciousness. And we weren't mental. It was like, yeah, let's just, we would like do whatever we had to do. And where other people like, can you do this, or this isn't right, or it's not Prabhupada's books. But for us, it was just, it's what, he understood what Prabhupada wanted, and he just did it. And whatever worked, he was like, let's do it, isn't it? He
it
wasn't
is.
mental
And
about
at the same time, like in his personal life, and teaching
it.
the devotees around him, he was very keyed into, like, I remember he wouldn't he don't pick flowers at night, because Prabhupada said that'll wake up the plant, and you can't do that. That's an offense to the plant. I mean, who knows these
Yeah.
things? I've only heard that from Gunagrahi Maharaj. Like, he's like, Prabhupada didn't want us to wake up the plants, so like, so I get mad
Yeah,
if it
super
was
true.
if
Super true.
we hadn't picked the flowers yet and it was starting to get dark. He's kind of like, go out and get them
Yeah.
before they go to sleep or whatever. But these, what was I gonna say about? Um,
How he
oh,
brought
oh,
in
oh,
the
oh, oh. So Ray Raghunath, um, his initial band was Youth of Today, and then he stopped doing that, and he basically, he was becoming a devotee. He went to India, um, and his plan was, I'm going to move into the temple. I'm going to go to Gita Nagari, the farm community, and I'm going to live there, and I'm going to just work with the cows and work in the fields, and like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, like, I don't need this like punk anymore. Like, I'm just doing this. This is simple living, high thinking. This is what I'm going to do. And Gunagrahi Maharaj was the one who said, no, you can't do that. Like you're like this huge influence on all these people. You have this megaphone for like the whole world, and and you gotta use it. So he had initially Raghunath had initially recorded the first Shelter record at the time, uh, just to just as a they call it a project. A lot of time people in the scene would have projects where they do like a one-off with some of their friends or whomever, and so that's what Shelter was meant to be. It was never meant to be a band that toured all over America and all over the world. But Gunagrahi Maharaj is just like, no, you can't. Like, really, you can't do that. You have like, you've been you've been blessed with this amazing thing, and you can't just.
Yeah.
It was very much like the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna wanted to renounce and go away and just live a life of saintly devotion, and Krishna saying, no, you got to do your duty. This is the thing that you're meant to do. And there was the same thing. He was saying, no, you can't like just go and milk cows. Like, that's an important service, but that's not your service. And from that, yeah, I mean, Gunagrahi Maharaj, and then there were others who were very instrumental, Danadar Maharaj and Ravinda Sarup Prabhu, and there was a number of devotees who really helped. But he was the first one, yeah, he was the first one to recognize.
He's yeah, he's like he would always see if there was an opportunity, he would see it and he would grab it wherever it was, wherever we go. It was kind of like he had feelers, and you couldn't. It was like he had, I don't know. It was like he just had Shakti where to go. I wanted to talk a little bit about his own strictness. It's amazing the experience with him. Of course, living with him, I saw how he was always up. He would always get up early. I don't ever remember him sleeping more than 5.5 or 6 hours. No matter what we did, no matter how tired he was, he would always get up. And when we had normal schedule, he was usually up around 3 o'clock, chanting. But did you remember the prasadam we had on Krishna Fest? As far as I remember, it was khichdi and baked potatoes.
And salad
And the
and
khichdi,
dressing and bread.
oh, okay.
I remember,
Part
Mahatma, I still quote you that, welcome to Krishna Fest. Hope you like Kitchery.
um, I remember Maharaj making khichdi for a week, and we would just, when we were, I think, traveling on smaller programs, we cook it up once a week, and that's what we ate. Basically, morning and big breakfast and lunch. But one of the most interesting experiences I had with him is in 1992, he came to Mauritius, basically to get me. And he stayed there, and that's when we decided I was going to leave and join Krishna Fest. Well, when he got there, he had this horrible flu, and he had this horrible flu the whole time he was there. He was basically immobile. He didn't do anything while he was there. He just stayed in his room. And he stayed in the room next to me. And the most amazing thing is, every morning he was up at 3 o'clock chanting his rounds, even though he was basically dysfunctional all day. Because when I get that sick, I would never do that. And he was just like so into being up early that even he had to sleep the rest of the day. He was up at that time. I was amazed. Like, why are you doing that? You're so sick. You should rest. So you saw that also? That
Yeah,
kind
when I
of like,
first moved into, so I was a teenager and I had to finish high school and that kind of thing. So I couldn't join yet. But when I finally did, and at the time Maharaj and Krishna Fest were staying in again in the DC temple, and I remember when I came, the first thing that night, he's like, the book distributors are here. We've been getting up at 2:30 every morning. It's ecstatic. It's amazing. And so that was our regular program. Go to bed at 8:30 and get up at 2:30. But then, so this one spring was when we would mainly go to downtown DC and set up in front of these museums, because that's when most of the tourists would come. And one season we decided, let's go to bed at 7:45 and get up at 1:45. We'll have so much time to chant and to study, and we can fit an extra class in. So this was summer on the east coast of America. It's not dark at 7:45 p.m. It doesn't get dark until well after 8. So we would go to sleep before the sun went down, and we would get up hours and hours before the sun came up. And he just really wanted to. He really appreciated that morning time of the studying and chanting and just sadhana. He really relished that time, and he wanted to make sure the devotees he was with had. He was always very sensitive about making sure, making sure we had enough time to study. Like if we weren't reading an hour a day,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
would change our service so that
yeah.
we could. And also he was, even though he was sleeping 6 hours a day, I was like a, whatever, 17-year-old kid. 6 hours did not do it for me. So I had a nap I had a nap scheduled in. I had to get up after 6 hours,
Yeah,
but then
right.
I always had a
Right.
nap, because he knew where people were at, and he facilitated them. He empowered them. I mean, again, 17, 18-year-old kid, he said that, I remember him saying, Prabhupada says responsibility, you know, is good because it allows you to mature. And so like two teenagers, we'd take one of these vans or RVs that Maharaj had, and we'd just go off like preaching to the straight edge kids for weeks at a time. And he was just
Mm.
like, go meet the straight edge kids, hang out with, and it was just, and he just trusted us to go
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
the things. And it was really, and we met so many amazing people that way. Some of whom are still, I still know to this day.
The point about taking care of devotees, when he was president in San Diego, he was like everybody's father. And I noticed he was extremely concerned about everyone on a personal level. That was one of his most outstanding qualities. And there's a story that illustrates this, aside from just daily taking care of devotees. And you would see him like walking around the block talking to devotees, men or women, everybody. He was grihasta then. And he'd always be counseling, and they'd be walking around the block and around the block. And so all the devotees had this personal connection. He was really concerned. And then when he went to Vrindavan and he asked me, to try to help him in Argentina and with his devotees, I never actually seen such close connections between guru and disciple like I saw with him. I was amazed. It's like, what is he doing? Everyone is so attached to him. It's incredible. But there's one story that maybe the icing on the cake of this. It was in 1976, and we had a group of women in San Diego who were traveling in Texas in the winter for the Christmas marathon. Maybe like 6 girls, all unmarried girls, and one married man. And this married man he was doing something. One of the ladies called us and said, he's not being appropriate with us. And she was in anxiety about it. And Maharaj was so upset. He said immediately, we have to go there. We have to go there and stop this immediately. And we got on a plane, and I was a Sankirtan leader, and we just flew into Dallas, and I figured they're going to be in one of the best malls. And so we found them, and this whole, the man was basically exploiting the girls. He was a devotee, he was sincere, but he was weak, and so Maharaj was can you imagine that? He's like so concerned. We both get on an airplane. We fly off to the city to protect these girls because Maharaj didn't feel that he could stop it unless he went there. And it was amazing to see his concern. I've never heard of any temple president doing something like that. So that was one of his outstanding qualities of how much he cared. But I want to tell another story about this, which is similar. I think his care and his acceptance, they kind of go together. They're kind of different sides of the coin. Because you have to accept people to care for them. Otherwise, who cares for you? I don't like you. So I joined Krishna Fest. What was it? 1992 or 93? I can't remember. 92, I think was.
92 sounds right.
So I joined
By
Krishna.
the way, Maharaj was really happy to have you. Right. He came to Mauritius. I just want people to know who know Mahatma. He was like, I'm gonna go. I think I can get Mahatma, and he said, "Oh, he'll be perfect." And then and then when he did, he was super happy. So he really appreciated you, Mahatma, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he did. I know. Um, so I joined him. Yeah, I wanted to leave Mauritius. It was good timing, and it was the catalyst. So I joined him, and I had been in Saffron. My former wife had left me, and so I was thinking about sannyas. I was 42. I think I was a little delusional that I was ready, but I kind of at that point, I guess I was burned out. I felt I was ready, but after about 5 years of being single, and I was contemplating getting married again, although it wasn't my intention. And then so we had meetings, and then finally it was decided that I would do that. And so one morning, you know what it's like. You're wearing saffron for so many years, and then one morning you walk into the temple in white. It's like, oh, what happened? Is he an alcoholic? Did he see a prostitute? All these things go through people's minds. And Maharaj, Maharaj was, some people were like, okay, I'm not your friend anymore. It's like, how could you do this? You're supposed to be renounced. Maharaj was never like that. He was like, yeah, what, do it. He always had this saying, do what you have to do. What do you have to, how does that saying go? Something like, what do you have to do? You do it. Do what you have to do, I think. Just got to do what you got to do. That's the saying. So Maharaj would always say, just got to do what you got to do. So he was like, there was nothing in him like, oh, this is wrong. You've done something bad. He's like, yeah, just do what you got to do. This is what you got to do. And, it was like, that was his nature. It was like, he didn't see me any differently before or after. But some people did. They're like, oh, how could you do this? So I appreciated that just kind of wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't part of his modus operandus that, he just he saw you as you were you, and whatever else was around you was like kind of irrelevant. At least that's my experience. That's your
Eh,
experience also.
yeah, and he, like you were saying, he would hang out with these unsavory characters, and we had like all kinds of people traveling with us on Krishna Fest. In fact, I was just talking to a good friend of mine who who actually his name's Henry. He's kind of known by some devotees, at least worldwide, for a couple of years. Mother Yamuna lived with him while she was creating one of her
Mhm.
cookbooks,
Yeah.
and but one of the first times we had met, and he had met Gunagrahi Maharaj. Uh, Maharaj brought this. I don't even know who this guy was. It's like some guy we picked up in Miami, and he was like, like he was. Maharaj saw like his like sincerity, like he wanted to like be a devotee, but he kind of had this like prarabdha karma. He had this like leftover, and and so I remember Henry, he was kind of like freaking out that he had a program in his house with invited us over, and and Henry, was like afterwards he's like, yeah, he brought that guy over. And anyway, turns out like a couple weeks later that guy stole Marge's video camera. Like, but so this is like often the kind of people that we are dealing with.
Yeah.
I wanted to, you were talking about Mars's drums. I wanted to tell a couple things about that. One is that you said, what would he be doing if he wasn't a devotee? I'd be playing congas in the park. So Maharaj really liked, as we know now, really liked the conga drums, but they were always made of leather. So he wouldn't buy them. He wouldn't, occasionally he'd see somebody have one and he played it on it a little bit, but he couldn't bring himself to buy a leather drum. And so then Remo came out with these synthetic head conga drums, and he was so excited because, like, this is for years and years he thought about playing conga drums, but it just like, no, they're leather. But then when he found it, and then he he would, he started like listening to different things so he could understand how to play the conga. And he'd be like, if you come across any recordings where there's really good conga, send it my way. And he was really really enthusiastic about that. And obviously, and the other thing I wanted to tell about was he was a sannyasi, and he didn't feel it comfortable to play like a full drum set. He never sat behind a drum set and played drums that way. He just thought it's just not, I don't know, it's not so proper for maybe for a sannyasi. And but then Shelter needed a drummer. It's not a He doesn't become Shelter's drummer. Just spoiler alert. Um, but what he does do is he takes this devotee who was a very good musician, but not a drummer, and he taught him how to play the drums, and he taught him.
Kendra?
Yeah, he taught Akendra how to play the drums, and Akendra was a good musician, so it wasn't hard for him to pick it up. But
Yeah.
Maharaj sat behind the drum set, and he showed him different riffs and different you know how to play the drum set. And because he was a good musician, Akendra went on and became quite a good drummer. But it was again, like he's like, okay, well, it's not my thing to play drum set as a sannyasi, but this person has to
Yeah.
learn. And so he just
I tried to
he just did it.
I tried to
Go
push him
ahead.
sometimes when there was a drum set. He'd be like, because he liked it too much. It was like, but I think it's good for everyone to know. I don't know if everyone knows this. The band Shelter, which was like super successful and popular, was all brahmacharis, right?
For the first
Kendra,
many many years, yeah.
yeah, it
The
was all
Kendra,
just
Krishna
brahmacharis.
Chaitanya, yeah.
And Praja Kishore
Paramananda
was in it
and
originally.
Brajikishore for a while, yes, and then he formed his own band. Yeah, it was all brahmacharis.
So, brahmacharis living in the temple, with this like, and they were austere, they were strict, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, and so if you were with Maharaj, you always had like, wasn't it? It was like, okay, what time is it? It's 12 o'clock. Okay, we're getting up in 6 hours. It was, wasn't it? It was
It
always
was
like, what
yes,
time is
yes, and I remember when we in I don't know if were you with us when we were in Brooklyn that summer? I don't think so.
it? No,
We were in Brooklyn one summer, and we would go into New York City, into Manhattan every night, because that's when that's when stuff happens in New York City. And so we would set up, I forget, it was like 5 different book tables around Manhattan, and then there was a truck that they would do kirtan on and just drive around. But we didn't even go out until like I forget what time, 7 or 8 o'clock, and so we were getting to bed really really late. And so yeah, it was like 6 hours, but that meant we were getting up at like 8 or 9 o'clock or something. But
yeah,
we'd have like the full morning program.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was condensed, but he made sure we had time to do our rounds, and we did all the we did all the we did, so I'm sorry, we did Guru Puja, we did all the songs that were in
every day.
the morning
Yeah, I
program. Yeah,
remember that.
yeah,
Like when we were traveling, and I remember when we were in Denton, Texas, and they had these like Thursday night whatevers, and we'd go out and do kirtan, and we'd stay in the motorhome, and yeah, whenever we went to bed, 6 hours, and then it was just the morning program started, and it was very strict. I wanted to tell something that you all may not know, but Maharaj and I, we spent a few months together developing a course called The Making of a Highly Effective Preacher, and we taught that. Must have been in March of '93. We taught it in Vrindavan. I don't know if you were there for that or
yeah.
that course.
I did all the research to get the quotes. That was when
You would,
Folio
you
first
would see
came out.
them. Yeah, when we were hiding out in the forest and studying. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, um, so we would do these little role plays. This little like we would discuss. Okay, we're going to do this little drama, but we never practiced. It was just okay. This is what we're going to do. And so in front of the class would be the first time we do the drama. And Maharaj, little known to me, was an amazingly good actor. Like, I was in shock. He was so good that I couldn't play my part. I'd just be laughing because he was, you know, it was like a professional. I don't know if you know this or remember, but he was like, I was amazed when we would do the role plays. You know, I studied acting. I thought I was a good actor or something. He was so much better. And I would be just laughing. He was so funny and so good that I couldn't even play my part. Come in. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're doing a program and I have to get ready. I have to take prasad, unfortunately. Usually we go longer. And this is Krishna Karshini right here. She is organizing a program with her husband.
Haribo.
And I have to
Wish us good luck because we are stressed, really.
You don't need luck. You got Mahatma there, so you'll.
Yeah, I know.
It'll
But,
be
you know, I
perfect.
feel that it's a kind of pressure because he wants a lot of people to come.
Well,
So it's a
Mahatma
kind of
Prabhu's very he's very relaxed, which yeah. Compared to some of the devotees
I
I've
hope he is.
dealt with over the years, he's very chill.
But still, we need your blessings. So
Okay.
please, prayer for.
May you have 100 sons and no daughters.
Thank you. No. 0 sons, 0 daughters.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
So we have to continue this, but tomorrow I'm going to be busy because we're doing a program at this time. I might broadcast the program, but it won't be about Gunagrahi Maharaj. But we will continue this, and then on Tuesday I'll be in Vrindavan, and then we'll do a memorial and make sure that it gets televised for sure. So anyway, stick with us, and I'm going to write something about Gunagrahi Maharaj. I'll write, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages, what I can. I encourage everyone who knows him to write something and post it. And he'll inspire us. Yeah, there's so much more about him to say, but I have to go now. So thank you all for watching. And we'll
Thank you for inviting me, Mahatmaji.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Gunagrahi Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.